You didn't come here by accident. You might think you clicked on this video because of curiosity, boredom, or maybe a passing interest in ancient Egyptian mythology. But what if I told you this moment, this very second, is a spark? A subtle flicker from something deep inside you that has long been asleep. And now, it's starting to wake up. That flicker has a name, Sekhmet. Not just a goddess carved into old temple walls. Not just mythology, not just history. Sekhmet is a living current of energy. She's not here to entertain you. She's here to ignite you. You might be surprised to learn that Sekhmet was never meant to be tamed. She wasn't soft. She wasn't polite. She wasn't the goddess you prayed to for comfort. She was the lioness, the firestorm, the one who walks into a room and turns illusions to ash. And if you feel even the faintest sense of discomfort hearing that, good. That means something is shifting. Because here's the truth, we've been numbed. You've likely spent years, maybe your entire life, trying to stay calm, composed, likable. To fit in, to stay under the radar, to avoid standing out too much. Society rewards the cold, the quiet, the emotionless. We're told to be rational, reasonable, appropriate. Anything else? Too much. Too emotional. Too intense. Sekhmet doesn't care about being appropriate. She cares about truth. And truth? It's rarely comfortable. It doesn't come wrapped in soft words or gentle music. It doesn't knock politely. It roars. But here's the catch. Most people never hear it. They've been trained to ignore it. Conditioned to stay numb, indifferent, emotionally detached from what truly matters. So instead of facing truth, they scroll. They binge. They consume endless information. Facts, stories, aesthetics, without ever feeling the core. They remain passive, indifferent, not because they're bad or lazy, but because the world has taught them to fear their own fire. And that's where you come in. Because if you're still listening, then something in you refuses to stay asleep. You're tired of indifference, tired of pretending, tired of living a life that looks good on the outside but feels hollow within. There's a hunger you can't name, a fire you can't extinguish. And that's why Sekhmet is calling. She doesn't offer safety. She doesn't promise comfort. But she will show you what's real. She will demand that you shed every mask, every lie, every version of yourself that was built to please others. And when that happens, you'll feel exposed, raw, and incredibly alive. This awakening isn't aesthetic. It's not about reading spiritual quotes or lighting candles or buying statues. It's about walking into the furnace of your truth and standing there without flinching. That's the real initiation. And let me warn you, it won't always feel like magic. In fact, it may feel like chaos. Like everything you thought you were is being stripped away. Like you don't know who you are anymore. That's the point. Sekhmet destroys what is not true, so what remains is real. You may be surprised at how much of your life has been constructed to avoid discomfort. How much of your personality has been built to survive, not to thrive. But as you begin to peel those layers back, you'll start to sense it, the wildness beneath. The power, the clarity. That's the version of you that Sekhmet is here for. Not the polite you, not the numb you, not the fearful you, but the you who remembers what it means to feel fully, to act from knowing, to speak from flame. And so, this is your invitation. Not to believe, but to burn. Because once you allow the fire in, you'll never be able to go back to sleep again. Before the fire, there was silence. Before the roar, there was a long, aching stillness. Most people don't realize that transformation begins not in a moment of inspiration, but in a moment of heartbreak. Not the kind of heartbreak we sing about, relationships or betrayal, but the quiet, private grief of realizing how far we've drifted from ourselves. Let's be honest. You weren't always like this. There was a time when you were wild and curious and full of light. You used to ask questions that made adults uncomfortable. You used to feel deeply and loudly, and you didn't apologize for it. You used to know what you loved without overthinking it. And most of all, you used to trust your own voice. So what happened? You learned to shrink, to become acceptable, to dull your edges. You started noticing which parts of you got rewarded and which parts got ignored, or worse, punished. You learned how to silence the parts of yourself that felt too much. You started editing your spirit just to survive the room. And now you're exhausted. That exhaustion isn't just from work or responsibilities. It's from carrying a self that isn't fully yours. A self that has been slowly constructed to match the expectations of others. And that's where the sadness sits, in the realization that you've spent years living someone else's story. But sadness doesn't travel alone. Right beneath it, if you're honest, is a rising heat. A quiet, growing anger. Not the kind that lashes out at others. This one is deeper. It's the fury of knowing you were made for more. That you've been robbed of something sacred. That you've traded truth for approval. That the world taught you how to be liked, but never how to be whole. Let that sink in. This grief you carry? It's not weakness. It's clarity. This anger you feel? It's not toxic. It's sacred. These are the guardians of your inner truth. And they are tired of being ignored. We live in a culture that is terrified of grief and rage. We're told to stay positive, move on, forgive and forget. But Sekhmet teaches a different lesson. Feel it fully, or it will rot you from the inside out. Let it move. Let it rise. Let it speak. Because this is the alchemy. You cannot become your true self without passing through your shadow. You cannot ignite your power without first facing what's been buried. That includes your disappointments, your regrets, your repressed rage. It includes the version of you who was silenced so many times that she forgot how to scream. But here's the beautiful truth. She's still inside you. Still watching. Still waiting. Still wild. Sekhmet doesn't ask you to suppress her. She invites you to remember her. To let her grieve. To let her rage. To stop pretending you're okay when you're not. To stop smiling when your soul is screaming. To stop playing nice when what you really need is to reclaim what was taken. You're not broken. You're buried. And this moment, this deep ache you feel, is not your end. It's the beginning of the unearthing. The sacred reckoning. The long overdue return to your full, messy, radiant self. So if you're crying, let it pour. If you're trembling with rage, let it shake you. This isn't weakness. This is power in its most raw and honest form. And once you walk through this storm, you'll no longer be afraid of your own depths. Because you'll know, the fire of Sekhmet doesn't just destroy. It also cleanses. It also reveals. It also makes room for you to rise. After the storm comes a strange stillness. Not emptiness, not silence, something else. Like a breath you didn't know you were holding, suddenly released. Joy doesn't always announce itself with trumpets. Sometimes, it returns in whispers. It might be the moment you catch yourself smiling at something small. Sunlight through a window, the smell of warm tea, the way a bird lands without hesitation. It might be laughter that erupts from your chest, unexpected and unplanned, like your body remembering how to feel light again. And when it comes, that joy feels foreign. You almost don't trust it. After everything, how can something so simple feel so beautiful? Because this joy isn't the same as before. This isn't the shallow kind of joy we chase on social media. It's not distraction or denial. It's not pretending everything's fine. This joy was earned. It rose from the ashes of what you faced in silence. It bloomed in the soil you tilled with your own grief. It is sacred, rooted, resilient. And most of all, it is yours. You start to feel it in your breath, in your skin, in the way your shoulders relax when no one's watching. You don't owe anyone a reason. Joy does not require explanation. Because what they don't tell you is that joy isn't just a reward, it's a rebellion. To feel joy in a world that tries to keep you numb is a radical act. To smile, laugh, dance, sing. These are not just expressions. They are declarations. Proof that you have not been defeated. Proof that even though the world tried to silence you, your spirit remembered the song. Sekhmet smiles at this. She is not just the goddess of wrath and fire. She is also the goddess of medicine, healing, and life restored. Her fire doesn't just burn. It warms, it lights, it gives life. And now, you feel that warmth returning. You wake up and the world looks different. Not because the world changed, but because your vision did. You've stopped bracing for pain. You've started seeking beauty, not as a way to escape, but as a way to honor your survival. You find yourself humming again, touching the earth again, reaching out to people, not out of desperation, but out of genuine connection. You're no longer performing a version of yourself. You're starting to live as yourself. And it feels so good. There's a kind of wonder in realizing how much of you was always waiting beneath the surface. A wild, sacred joy that was never fully lost, only hidden, guarded, preserved until you were ready to claim it. And now, you're ready. You're not naive. You know the world still has sharp edges. But you also know how to hold both, the ache and the delight, the tears and the laughter, the fire and the calm. You are no longer living only in survival mode. You are learning to live in presence. And presence is where joy lives. It's not in the past or the imagined future. It's in the now, the breath, the heartbeat, the small moments that carry enormous truth. You are here. You are alive. You are allowed to enjoy this. Sekhmet doesn't require that you suffer to prove your strength. She wants you to remember that true strength includes softness. That power includes pleasure. That healing includes laughter. You earn this joy. Let it move through you. Let it stay. Because this is only the beginning. It begins as a pulse. Not loud, not overwhelming, just a quiet rhythm beneath your skin. A kind of knowing that you're meant for more than survival. That something is waking up inside you. At first, it feels like nervousness. Like standing on the edge of something vast, staring into your own future and feeling it stir. But it's not fear. It's energy, movement, life returning to your limbs. You've walked through shadows. You've known the weight of silence. You've sat in the stillness of grief, the numbness of routine, the ache of not yet. But now the energy shifts. This is no longer a story about endurance. This is a story about ignition. You don't need permission to rise. The fire inside you doesn't ask if the world is ready. It moves on instinct, on purpose, on sacred timing. You wake up one day and realize you want to do something. Not just exist. Not just cope. Speak. There's a spark in your chest that wasn't there before. A light behind your eyes that no longer flickers. It blazes. You are no longer content to observe your own life from a distance. You want to step in, to take up space, to dance without choreography, to write without censoring, to love without apology, to live without shrinking. Sekhmet's energy is rising in you, not just as destruction, but as activation. Her fire doesn't burn to harm, it burns to awaken. Her roar isn't rage, it's remembrance. And you are remembering. Remembering that your life was never meant to be quiet, that your voice carries vibration, that your movement ripples through the universe like a sacred signal. I am here. I am alive. I am becoming. You start to feel the beat of your life again. Not the one handed to you by expectations or conditioning, but the primal rhythm that's uniquely yours. And suddenly, ordinary moments become sacred again. Walking becomes a ceremony. Breathing becomes a declaration. Every choice becomes a step toward embodiment. You no longer numb yourself to avoid discomfort. You welcome sensation, even when it stings, because it means you're awake. It means you're present. It means you're in it. And with presence comes power. You begin to take bolder steps. Not because the fear disappears, but because the joy grows louder. You don't need certainty anymore. You just need truth. And your body knows the difference. You feel the thrill of becoming again. The curiosity of the unknown. The playfulness that says, what if this time you followed the energy instead of the fear? You realize that you don't need to burn out to be worthy. That passion doesn't mean overextending. It means alignment. You can be full of fire and full of peace. You can be loud with purpose and soft with love. You can be powerful without being hardened. This is the kind of joy that electrifies your cells. That tingles in your fingertips and lifts your spine. That makes you want to move, not away from something, but toward it. This is the moment when you stop waiting. You stop rehearsing. You stop looking for the right conditions. You begin. Because there's no more pretending that you're small. There's no more hiding behind doubt. There's no more asking, am I ready? When your soul is already shouting yes. This is the rise. This is the return. This is the power of joyful action. And once that fire catches, you'll never live asleep again. It doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes healing arrives in silence. In a quiet morning when you realize, nothing hurts the way it used to. In a moment when you laugh without guilt, smile without effort, or breathe without carrying the whole weight of yesterday. You're not who you were, and that is not a loss. It is a quiet triumph. A victory with no audience. A celebration with no banner. A homecoming with no trumpet, just the deep sigh of finally. There were days when your joy felt like a myth. A distant memory blurred by exhaustion. You couldn't picture peace, you only remembered the ache. Disappointment was stitched into your expectations, and hope was something you rationed. But you kept going anyway. You got out of bed when the weight was unbearable. You smiled even when your chest was hollow. You gave when you had little left. You held others even when you were crumbling inside. And now, without even noticing the exact moment, something has shifted. You no longer need to pretend you're fine, because you are getting better. Not perfect, not invincible, but real, present. And you feel proud, not the loud, performative kind of pride, but the grounded kind. The kind that comes from knowing how far you've traveled inside yourself. The kind that recognizes your own hands in your healing. You chose to stay. You chose to soften. You chose to forgive. Even when it would have been easier to close off, to escape, or to become someone bitter. And that choice, that quiet, consistent choice, is what makes you powerful. Joy now isn't manic. It's not a mask. It's not a temporary distraction. It's a knowing, a confidence in your own ability to carry yourself through. A gentle return to wholeness. You realize joy was never supposed to be a peak moment. It was always a way of being. A steady undercurrent that hums beneath even the hardest days. The kind of joy that says, I am allowed to feel good again. Sometimes it feels strange, this lightness. You catch yourself waiting for the other shoe to drop. You question if you deserve it, because part of you remembers the grief too clearly. And that's okay. Joy isn't the absence of pain, it's the integration of it. It's what rises in you after you've sat with your sorrow long enough to understand it, to thank it, to release it. Now, you walk with a new posture, not rigid, not guarded, but rooted. Your shoulders lower, your jaw unclenches. You take up space with ease, not to prove, but to be. There's a kind of peace that comes when you're no longer trying to impress anyone. Not the world, not your past self, not the version of you that thought they had to achieve everything to be worthy. You know now, you were always enough, even in your darkest chapters. And that knowing becomes your superpower. You find beauty in simplicity again. The sound of rain, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the feeling of clean sheets or a good meal, or the way your chest expands when you finally speak your truth. And in those moments, you feel proud, not because everything is perfect, but because you made it here. You built this version of yourself, brick by brick, tear by tear, breath by breath. No one else can claim this peace. No one else can feel it the way you do, because no one else knows the battles you fought just to sit in it. You smile now, and it's real. You rest now, and it's earned. You dream now, not out of desperation, but out of delight. This is joy redefined. Not loud, but lasting. Not fleeting, but foundational. You're not chasing it anymore. You're living it. There comes a moment when stillness is no longer peace. It becomes resistance. When something inside you begins to stir, like a whisper growing louder, tugging at your chest, asking, what are you waiting for? It's not the loud shout of urgency. It's not panic. It's not pressure. It's energy. Raw, unshaped, and alive. A pulse that refuses to be ignored. You've carried healing long enough. You've built your foundation. You've exhaled the past and watered the future with your tears. Now comes the part where you move. And yet, you hesitate. Not because you don't want it. Not because you aren't ready. but because movement feels dangerous after standing still for so long. You've grown so accustomed to managing survival that joy, true, unfiltered, forward-moving joy, feels too big to hold. But that fire in you? It's not going out. It doesn't dim just because you're afraid. It waits. It watches. It builds. It knows that the life you long for isn't found by waiting for certainty. It's built in motion, shaped by action, discovered on the edge of comfort. This isn't about reckless leaps or blind trust. It's about aliveness, choosing to show up even with shaking hands, choosing to speak even with a trembling voice, choosing to move even when your feet remember every fall. That's what courage is. Not the absence of fear, but choosing joy despite it. Not pretending to be fearless, but honoring your fear and walking anyway. There's a version of you that's never been seen yet. One that dances without apology. One that speaks with thunder. One that runs toward the unknown. Not because it's safe, but because staying still would be the true loss. You know this version of you. You felt glimpses of them in dreams, in laughter, in flashes of inspiration that came and went like lightning. You've tasted that freedom, and you're hungry for more. It's not about achieving a goal. It's about becoming someone who no longer waits for permission to live. There is urgency in your soul now, but not panic. It's the urgency of spring, of new growth pressing against old walls, of creative tension, of desire too alive to be ignored. And still, the fear lingers. Quiet, lingering, reasonable. What if I fail? What if I'm judged? What if I lose something important? These are not questions to dismiss. They are thresholds to walk through. Because fear, when honored but not obeyed, becomes fuel. It sharpens your focus. It humbles your heart. It reminds you that this matters. If it didn't matter, you wouldn't feel afraid. So take that as a sign. This path, the one that makes your stomach flutter and your chest tighten, that's the one worth walking. You were not made to shrink in the face of desire. You were not made to settle for peace that costs your aliveness. You were not made to be quiet when your soul is screaming, "Let's begin." You were made for movement, and it doesn't have to be loud. The first step might be a whisper, a journal entry, a phone call, a decision no one else sees. But from that small ignition, the fire grows. Your breath deepens. Your presence expands. Your fear begins to transform, not disappear, but become a companion instead of a captor. This is how new lives begin. With shaky legs, with bright eyes, with a heart that beats louder than doubt. You are not foolish for wanting more. You are not selfish for choosing joy. You are not reckless for stepping toward a future no one else sees yet. You are alive. And that is the only permission you ever needed. There's a moment you don't expect. It doesn't come with fanfare or flashing signs. It arrives quietly, like the morning light slipping under your curtain. And suddenly, you notice. You are no longer the same. The things that used to break you don't touch you the same way. The voices that used to paralyze you sound distant now. The inner critic that once shouted now sounds more like a whisper. You hear it, but you no longer believe it. And it hits you. You've changed. Not because someone gave you permission. Not because the world applauded. But because you chose to. Again. And again. And again. When no one saw. When no one celebrated. When all you had was your own breath and your own willpower. You showed up. And now, something's different. You speak with more clarity. You stand a little taller. Your laughter is deeper. Your eyes are brighter. This is what happens when you heal. You don't become someone else. You become more of who you really are. You stop carrying what never belonged to you. You stop living someone else's story. You step back into your own. And with that realization comes something unexpected, joy. Not just happiness. Not just relief. But the kind of joy that brings you to tears. Because you remember the version of you who almost gave up. The one who cried into the pillow. The one who stayed silent when it hurt. The one who thought they were too broken, too late, too far gone. And now, you get to hold them close and whisper, "We made it." Not to the end, but to this new beginning. You feel pride swelling in your chest, Not arrogance, but deep reverence. For the miles you walked. For the wounds you turned into wisdom. For the courage it took to show up for yourself. And yet, there's a flicker. A small tremor in your chest. Fear. Not the same fear from before. This is different. What if I lose this? What if it's all temporary? What if I slip back? The joy is so precious now that losing it feels terrifying. Like holding a fragile light in your palms, wondering if the wind might blow it out. But here's the truth. This version of you is not an accident. It is the product of intention, of choice, of soul-deep effort. You didn't stumble here by luck. You earned this. So breathe. Place your hand over your heart. And know, the fear of losing this is only proof that you value it. Let that fear remind you to stay awake, to stay present, to keep choosing. You are not fragile anymore. You are aware. You understand that joy is not a destination, it's a practice. And every time you choose honesty over perfection, stillness over chaos, love over fear, you choose joy again. Let yourself enjoy this chapter. Not because it's the final one, but because you deserve to rest in the truth of your own becoming. Let yourself be proud. Celebrate the smallest shifts. Speak kindly to yourself, not just because it's healthy, but because it's true. You've been your own witness through it all. And now you're your own confirmation that change is not just possible, it's inevitable when you stay present and keep moving. There will still be hard days. Old thoughts might visit. Fear might knock again. But this time, you know what to do. You've learned the rhythm of your healing. You've danced with darkness and found light. You've gone to the edge and discovered your wings. This is what power feels like. Not control, but awareness. Not perfection, but presence. You are standing in a new frequency now. Not because you forced it, but because you became it. Welcome to your becoming. This is your moment. The moment when silence breaks and movement begins. The moment when all your inner work, your searching, your remembering, asks to become action. The old life won't ask for your permission. It will quietly creep back in with its familiar routines, its subtle doubts, its old rhythms. It will whisper, just stay here. Don't rock the boat. Don't reach too far. But something in you is different now. You've seen what's possible. You've touched your own potential. You've felt the truth in your bones. And now, you can't unsee it. So let's not pretend this is just another day. This is a threshold. A doorway between who you've been and who you're becoming. You can choose comfort, familiarity, predictability, or you can choose the fire. Yes, the fire. The one that burns off illusion. The one that purifies. The one that scares you just enough to wake you up. Because real change isn't soft. It's not always gentle. It requires boldness, commitment, movement before you feel fully ready. And let's be honest, you'll never feel fully ready. There will always be that tug of fear, that inner shaking, that what if I fail, that what if I lose everything I've gained? But hear this, fear is not your enemy. Fear is a compass. It points you straight toward the places that hold your next evolution. The real question is not, are you afraid? The real question is this worth it? Is becoming fully alive worth facing some fear? Is rising into your highest expression worth stepping outside the known? If your answer is yes, then act. Don't just think. Don't wait for signs. Don't wait for someone to tell you it's time. It's already time. Speak the words you've been holding back. Take the step you've been resisting. Show up for yourself louder than the doubt. Move forward before you feel qualified. Because the truth is, you become qualified by moving. And if you stumble, so what? Falling means you're in motion. It means you had the courage to leave stillness behind. And each fall teaches you balance. Each misstep builds strength. Each doubt invites clarity. You are not starting from scratch. You are starting from experience. You carry the wisdom of every inner battle, every awakening, every quiet victory. And now, it's time to carry it into the world. Let your voice be heard. Let your story be seen. Let your presence become a signal to others who are still in the dark, still wondering if they can. Because you're not just walking for you anymore. You're walking for everyone who thought it wasn't possible. Everyone who hasn't found their voice yet. Everyone still waiting to remember who they are. You are proof. You are permission. You are the living example that change is not only real, it's happening right now. So go. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, but truthfully. Say yes. Burn the old scripts. Step into the unknown like it's your birthright, because it is. And remember, this isn't a conclusion. This is ignition. Your story doesn't end here. It starts here. With motion, with choice, with fire. The world needs people who are lit from within, who have faced their shadows and still chose to shine, who don't wait to be chosen because they've already chosen themselves. So take the leap. Let the fear ride with you, but never let it steer. This is your life. This is your becoming. This is your now.